Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. You're on another episode of Iron Radio. This is Phil Stevens here. I'm a strength coach, football coach, Highland Games athlete, powerlifter, maker of many things.
Hey, what's going on? It's Dr. Mike Nelson, creator of the Flex Diet Cert, which opens this coming Monday, June 17th for 1 week. You can just go to flexdiet.com or email me for info. You'll probably see it on social media. And yeah, headed out to ISSN this coming Tuesday, and Lonnie will be there along with a bunch of other super nerds.
Woo! This is Coach Durrell, Strength Guild in KC. I'm a gym owner, basically an AI bot at this point. And then weightlifting coach, strongman coach, and I don't have any powerlifters anymore. Maybe I need to get back into that. I think some powerlifting nerds.
They all left you.
I don't have any calibrated plates.
Oh, they're not
Oh, man.
Yeah, let's not open that one again.
Plates. You have to beat them away with them.
And this is Lonnie Lowry. I'm a former competitive bodybuilder. Got my doctorate in ex-phys, been a nutritionist for 20 years, that kind of stuff.
I got one announcement before we go further. You guys can visit the Iron Radio Facebook page, my personal page, or Instagram. So everybody knows I've talked about it several times. I'm now coaching football at a high school, and it's an inner city high school. So we're starting a fundraiser to buy these kids equipment. Some of them need shoes, things like that, and they just can't afford them themselves. Every dollar helps. Like literally, we have a system you can donate $1, and I'm in a competition with another coach who was cheating. So I am using this opportunity to come on here and ask for your help. And anybody who donates at least $20, I have a copy of the Dietary Protein and Resistance Exercise book that I will sign and send to one person who donates over $20.
Cool.
So if you go on there, like I said, the easiest, I could name out the link, but it's long. So go on my Facebook, the Iron Radio Facebook, or my Instagram page. It's on there. Go in, donate, and July 3rd, I think, is the end of it. I will pick one person. We've had several come on. Ronnie Bossy, 5 or 6 listeners so far have found it and come on and donated. So if you can do that, help out the kids. Like I said, all the money goes to them. It's either to buy them food or equipment or things like that. So it's good.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. We have a listener mail.
Spencer emailed us, and he's seeing anecdotal reports online about creatine causing sleep issues. Per the article that he sent us, could there be some substance to this? I'm considering reducing my creatine dosage as I'm looking to improve my sleep. I am interested if you, the Iron Radio crew, have any thoughts. Basically, his article goes into it. I read over it. It contradicts itself a lot. Now, it's saying that you get some loss of non-REM and REM sleep and things like that. But then it also goes on to tell you that creatine is very beneficial for those people who don't get enough sleep. And it helps their cognitive function and things like that. So I read this, but then I dug further. If you go down at the bottom, of course, it actually has references. If you take the time to read the reference studies, they go into the kind of hypothesis that the good thing about creatine is it gives your brain more energy that it uses, and potentially you need less sleep. So it kind of contradicts itself. Like Lonnie was saying, it's kind of a shock jock news here. They're trying to pinpoint a bad thing and make it into a bad thing where it actually might be a benefit. Because basically you're going to sleep, like we need sleep to restore energy. And what it's looking like is more like creatine is actually like you go to bed to restore brain energy, and the creatine in and of itself is already giving you more energy. So you're just waking up after less sleep because your tank's full and it's ready to go again. That was my takeaway, was that it's just like it's aiding in that. So you just need less sleep. Now they will go on and say, like, if you really feel like there are non-responders and things like that. So if you're a non-responder and it's jacking with your sleep, but you're not getting the benefits, maybe it's time to back off. So, I mean, if you're a non-responder, then yeah, don't take it. But that seems like it's a small percentage of the population. So, I mean, the resounding theme to me was like, it's allowing you to do more work. Like there's new studies that came out in May on creatine in humans, not rats. And they put these people through cognitive tests. They purposely made them stay up all night. Brought them in the afternoon, put them through a cognitive test. You were either in the placebo group or the non-placebo group. And they ran it twice, so everybody did it. And after creatine supplementation, a large dose, their cognitive function when sleep impaired drastically increased, and they got better. The short-term memory went way up, and things like that. So it seems like one of those deals. It seems like it's a non-issue, but they're trying to turn it into an issue for shocking news.
Clicks.
Yeah, and so I mean, if you feel like you're just not sleeping, and the deal is like if you're sleeping 6 hours but you're waking up feeling very rested, you don't have an issue.
Agreed.
If you're sleeping 5-6 hours and you wake up and you're dead tired, maybe you got an issue. So,
but why would you spend a third of every day sleeping if you can get away spending only a quarter of every day sleeping? Yeah. There's an old Arnold quote about that. Like he's like, if somebody thinks they need 9 hours of sleep, I suggest you sleep faster. It just it kind of allows that in a way. I think that's very cool.
What's interesting about really anything that's like physical culture, muscle building stuff is, I mean, how beneficial it is to the brain almost every time. Like if you co-conducted research of psychology and many of the exercise science, like whether it's conditioning based or like aerobic based or strength based, the effects on the brain are almost as interesting as like what happens in the body in general. But like creatine being primarily a quote unquote bro drug, and how much it just helps with, brain stuff is always like I wish these concepts were tied together more often in the community, like in the just field in general. But that's kind of my downside of it.
I think I couldn't agree more. Since I started bodybuilding, I've been equally fascinated with like nootropic and, cognitive enhancement. Who would not be interested in brain function and mind gains with a Z? In fact, I think there's a lot of that sort of muscle nerd. I mean, I think Iron Radio started a huge amount of our listener base, or when we were writing for T-Mag and stuff. That's why people are going there. They're muscle nerds, but they're equally interested in the, powerful mind. Why would you not be?
Well, yeah, and from the start, I mean, once all the cognitive function tests started coming out on creatine, that's when I started paying more attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's be real, creatine, it does work, but it's not like it was first reported. Like it's not like taking a bunch of D-ball. You don't just blow up.
Right.
But
Bill Phillips wasn't right.
It's the long-term effects and like the use on Alzheimer's patients and stuff like that is where it really started opening my eyes. It was like, oh, okay, let's combat some of this stuff that happens as I age.
Yes.
Because like I like training, so I'm going to go in and train anyways. But like if I can somehow help my brain as I get older, that's when I started really putting my eyes on creatine. It was the long-term effects of that. So,
Yeah,
Mike and I have seen in-person talks by Greenhoff, Harris. In fact, I saved Harris's nameplate. I had dinner with him once. He said, I'm such a nerd. But these guys are like, these are the main old school, like OG creatine guys, like they are the ones that I would go to for the final word. And when they started talking about, even Stu Phillips, I think, gave a talk, or it might have been Ternopolsky. Amazing stuff about, brain function, and not just TBI, just brain stuff in general. So,
and with the brain stuff, you might need a higher dose. Like when I talked to Dr. Eric Ralston about that, the jury's still kind of out because we can't really do, obviously, human dissections of brain tissue all that easy. So it's very hard to get a direct idea. You usually have to use MRS or some other type of imaging to try to infer what's going on. But if you're really doing it for cognitive stuff, like before I go kiteboarding, I'll usually up my dose of creatine to 10 to 20 grams per day for a week before, thinking that, well, if I do get dropped out of the sky in my head, hopefully I don't, that maybe my risk of TBI or concussion will be a little bit less. There's not really any negative effects. Obviously, there's been the loading studies on 20 grams in the past, so we know that it's safe. It's just a little bit more effort and a little bit more cost, but creatine's pretty cheap now anyway. So people are really looking for cognitive effects. You may have to go with a little bit higher dose depending on what you're trying to do.
Hey, can I ask you guys, have you ever connected restless sleep or anything to your creatine intake? I can say that's true overdoing caffeine, but never with creatine that I've noticed. What do you guys think?
I haven't had an issue with it at all. But.
Yeah, same. When I was doing casein shakes, I would do creatine and I never had an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the only thing I've heard of is I did an interview with Dr. Greg Pottinger, and he had, based on some research that it was theoretical at the time, this is probably 2 years ago, that taking a dose of creatine right before bed may not be the best for sleep, but he admitted that that was kind of theoretical at that point. In terms of clients, if they do have a hard time sleeping, I will move their creatine to earlier in the day. But I can say that about any supplement. There's always, you work with enough people, there's always weird things. I can't point to any, hard literature on it, but I just figure, we know it's good. Taking it another day, we know timing doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I will move it to earlier in the day if possible and see if it helps. But again, that's just based off of trial and error.
And that's the one thing this article actually goes into. It says if you're having an issue, start taking it in the morning. So
yeah.
But it's just like it says, goes into the timing of it and things like that. And I do it in the morning anyways. Like most any supplement I take, it's like part of the morning ritual. Get it done, move on with the rest of my day. Now
it's in my coffee.
Yep, yeah. Exactly. So,
all right. Before we get to the topic of the day, I wanted to touch on, this is sort of a little Botanicals primer that's in the new Food Technology magazine. This is June of 24. This is spanking new stuff by Elizabeth Brewster.
Strength and Muscle Sport News.
I know we know this and a lot of our listeners do, but it's a good reminder, It says the current mix of vegan, plant-based, clean label, and functional food product demand is proving to be fertile soil for botanical ingredients sourced from roots, fruits, flowers, leaves, herbs, and spices. Botanical ingredients with specific health benefits are capitalizing on the push toward broader plant-based eating, says Lou Ann Williams, Global Insights Director at Innova. Innova Market Insights is one of those big ones, that you kind of watch where consumers are going. It says botanical ingredients are generally familiar to consumers and the usual suspects, right? Ginger, chamomile, ginseng, and turmeric were highly recognizable, according to this article. And ADM, which is another search for, a marketing firm. What I wanted to share was two things. One is this botanicals glossary. When we talk about botanicals, and we can, offer our little insights on each one of these, but the first word is adaptogen, active compound in plant that is thought to increase the body's resistance to adverse biological, chemical, or physical factors from stress. I'm not a big fan of the word adaptogen. Like, it feels to me like one of those catch-alls, like one of those red flags. When something is a cure-all, I get skeptical. But I was also skeptical of creatine when it came out. For those first 2-3 years when the data were coming out, I'm like, you can't just eat energy. What? But that was not correct. I revised my conclusion. But you hear adaptogen. So much of that stuff is, as we know, it's like Eastern Bloc studies, either not replicated in the West, and I'm not saying it has to be real, but it just sounds a little exaggerative. You read the studies and you can tell that they're pushing something, like they're funded by a company or something like that. And I'm going to just jam through these, and you guys give me your thoughts. So there's adaptogen. Botanical is just a plant or part of a plant valued for its medicinal or therapeutic properties. An essential oil is a volatile substance obtained by distilling or expressing plant material from a single botanical form and species. A couple other ones from here. Oleoresin an extract typically from natural food or flavoring raw materials that combines an essential oil and resin compounds. And then finally, just spice. Spice seed, fruit, root, bark, or stem of a plant used to flavor or color a food. So flavor and color when we say spices.
I mean, I would say historically, I haven't been a huge fan of adaptogens because, like you said, you have to kind of go down the different philosophy of how you look at everything for it to kind of make sense. And anytime I hear something that just seems to help everything, I'm like, that seems a little too good to be true. Maybe in the last couple of years, I've kind of changed my mind a little bit from talking to guys like Hal Dietz and Hank Krasnoff and some other people that I think in some cases with very high level athletes, there could be some benefits for them in terms of recovery. I kind of view adaptogens are something that'll get you back to baseline faster, but doesn't mess up the adaptation. That's just kind of my own personal working definition of it. I think there probably is something there, although I don't use a lot of them. But there's becoming more and more data. And like you said, with herbal stuff, you have to look to see, well, what component, like even just, ginger or whatever you're picking as your herb of choice. There's many different active compounds. What did they pick? What did they standardize it for? If they standardize it for that thing, that's the compound that is most effective? But again, you're still looking at very low single-digit percentages, even in the best-case scenario. And you are correct, a lot of it is sponsored by the company. If you're using like a standardized KSM extract, yeah, that company has a vested interest to show that it's beneficial. The flip side is, who else is really going to do the research on it? Because these are, such smaller components. So I've been a big fan of, people looking for graduate projects and stuff of like, hey, maybe look at some adaptogens or look at some of these herbs. Like you can buy them over the counter for your study. It's not going to cost you that much. Maybe you could send out a few to verify via lab to make sure it is what it is. Most exercise phys labs have the basic equipment there to do it. Unfortunately, for better or worse, grad students are cheap labor.
Right.
So, I've been a big fan of trying to get, some other institutions to do these as kind of little smaller side projects to kind of add to the literature. So it's not just only the manufacturer either.
Over the years, as a lot of the cannabinoid stuff has come out, I started leaning a little bit away from standardized extracts of a single thing, although I'm still interested in that. Like science says, reductionist, that's the effective main ingredient. But on the flip side, this entourage effect seems to be important as well. For me, it's always like, how do I increase the absorption? Because so many of these things, they sound great. Absorption. Yeah, but they don't have good bioavailability and blah, blah, blah. Let me just round out this article. It says, Indian inspiration. Ayurveda, Indian herbal medicine, is finding greater acceptance among consumers, reports Lou Ann Williams, Global Insights Director at Innova Market Insights. And by the way, if anybody ever wants to go beyond this show and look at food trends, Innova is a great one. Mordor is another one. I always thought that was funny, but Mordor is another. Foods and beverages incorporating ashwagandha, a foundational herb in Ayurvedic medicine, and one of the fastest growing ingredients in dietary supplements, are poised for rapid growth in the $1.7 billion global Ayurvedic food market, according to research firm Business Research Insights. Hitting grocery store shelves throughout last year, Rowdy Mermaids, nice brand, Rowdy Mermaids Good Mood Soda brand is a caffeine-free, low-sugar, and infused with 200 megs of ashwagandha. Now, I reported on, there's a Monster product that specifically had lion's mane mushroom in it, and I bought some.
Oh, yeah.
And, you scour up and down the thing, they clearly say 200 megs of caffeine. But when you look for the dose of lion's mane.
Good luck.
Good luck. Yeah. So, I'm like, I really doubt there's enough in here to matter. And if you're not actually calling out a dose, then it doesn't matter. Then it's probably dosed. Anyway, 26% of consumers actively are seeking botanical and herbal extracts in their diets, according to ADM Botanicals Consumer Insights in 2020. one of the things that always leaves me scratching my head a little bit is why do we ask run-of-the-mill dietitians about how to take herbs or botanicals?
Yeah.
They're not trained in that. I was a dietetics prof, right, for years and years. They're not specifically trained. I'm not saying they can't go pull up the studies, but anybody, I would think, that's used to PubMed could go find that and come to some conclusions. I'm just saying, I used to always tell food companies or a supplement company that I was working with, and Mike, I know you've done this a lot too. It's like, guys, I'm a nutritionist. Like, you're talking about stuff that you start dipping your toes in toxicology, pharmacology, botanical stuff. You're going too far.
Raws.
Yep.
Where you get it.
And it just becomes like, this is not nutrition anymore. I'm not sure why, you'll see it like on Healthline. Oh, we asked a dietitian. Why? That's kind of a harsh, judgment. I mean, I have been one for 20 years, but anyway, and not to say some don't know, but again, you would just need some specialized training, I would think. I just want to round out this article by saying here, topped adaptogenic mushroom ingredients. Again, I'm fascinated with one particular mushroom, but the top three, reishi, lion's mane, and turkey tail. But yeah, I'd rather go for something like lion's mane. I think of the different, and I'm not saying there aren't data, behind some of these things. I mean, $11.72 billion global adaptogenic mushroom market in 2022. I mean, so this is a lot of money, and I do think you're going to start to see food companies start to sprinkle this in and create these functional foods. Mike, I know that you're really well read on some of the mushroom stuff. What's your take on lion's mane versus, reishi and turkey tail or some of these other ones?
Yeah, I mean, I actually like those. I've used lion's mane, for 7 years now. You probably, depending upon the dose and the extraction method, etc., you probably need a higher dose than what most people are taking, but you can see some effects of the smaller dose accumulated over several days. There's a bunch of studies that should be out this year on it. There was one, I think, new human study on it that was pretty positive. I'd have to go back and look. I tried to pull it, but I haven't read it yet. Another trick, if you're looking for cognitive stuff, I stole this from Tom Inclin on years ago. If I really am pushing it, I will take like up to 2 or 3 grams possibly of lion's mane, and I'll do it 40 to 60 minutes before exercise, aerobic exercise. And his thought was, because we know blood flow to the brain dramatically increases during exercise, maybe you can get more of the compounds into the brain tissue because of the increase of blood flow. I don't know anyone who's ever looked at it, but I figure that is no harm, and you definitely get the benefit of exercise at the same point. Turkey tail I have used for immune stuff. Seems to work pretty good. Not nearly as bitter. Reishi I think is very good for immune benefits. Usually I'll use that before bed, like before sleep, or if I'm traveling a lot. Real reishi is incredibly bitter and horrible tasting. So I'm very wary of anyone who puts a high amount of reishi in any ready-to-drink. Very, very hard to mask. In high doses, it just has a weird aftertaste. Most of the mushroom extracts, I'd say, unfortunately, in the market are crap. There's been multiple published studies on that. I do like the guys at Real Mushrooms. Dwayne Jackson has a company called Vibe Mushroom, and I have met the guys from Four Sigmatic. They seem to be pretty legit as far as I've been able to tell and what they're doing. Outside of that, I don't know. Every time I look around, there's a new mushroom company. And then the last part is, some of them will use the mycelial portion, or kind of the underground, quote-unquote, roots of the mushroom. There's a big debate about, is that better than the fruiting body, kind of the top portion? But long story short, I had a whole mushroom extract I was going to do in a supplement 6 years ago. I had, people to fund it and everything. And the company said, yeah, it's mushroom extract. Here's the amount. Here's the COA. It's made in the USA. It's organic. When I started talking to other more mushroom experts, I asked them, I said, well, is this grown on grain? And they wouldn't answer me. And so a lot of times they'll grow the mycelial portion on grain, and then they'll just grind the whole thing up, which I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, so it's organic and it's made in the U.S. and all this stuff, but you may not be getting the active components that you think, but technically it's legal. You can put it on the label and all this other kind of stuff.
So you're saying
just consumer beware.
It's diluted. Is that what you're saying? Because it's all
very
ground up
diluted
together. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you do like an iodine or a starch test, or you send it out for an independent lab, it'll register as a huge amount of starch because they don't separate it from the grain that they grow it on. They just throw it all in a thing and blend it up and like, hey, your mushroom product.
Right. Right.
And there might be some efficaciousness to it, but the research right now is not super supportive of that.
Yeah, I have a local friend. She's a mushroom hunter. She gets like the Mushroom Hunter magazine or whatever. And maybe I should have her on too, because I'm interested in like how much of this stuff can you just eat? Like if I bought a bunch of lion's mane and
yeah.
ate it up, And but I think about creatine. You can't really do it that way. I'd eat 10 pounds of uncooked red meat to get my creatine dose, and so it does make you wonder. But yeah, I think myconutrients, this MYCO, right, for listeners. It's a real trend, and there's something there. Like the medicinal mushrooms thing, there's something there. So that's where my eyes have been for the past couple of years, for sure.
The cordyceps senescens is one you see a fair amount, but you probably not really any legitimate products because it's way too expensive. It's a fungus off the back of a caterpillar. However, there is in the same area something called Cordyceps militaris, which you can grow in other areas. And there is starting to be more and more supportive data on that for exercise performance. I'd say it's still very preliminary, but I'm always leery if they don't put what type of cordyceps on the label. So that's another thing to watch out for. Or contact the company. If they refuse to tell you, then I wouldn't buy their product.
Phil and Jarrell both made a point. I'm into the mushroom stuff, not for exercise performance at all. Right?
Yeah.
Like the two things are cognition and immune, it seems to be. Like the different beta glucans, it can be very confusing for people. Like yeast beta glucans, you get like 3 grams of that a day, probably helps with immunosurveillance and all that kind of stuff. Oat beta glucans are a thing, mushroom beta glucans. That field gets deeper. I've never done a deep dive, but that seems to be some of the, active ingredient investigation. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm all about the cognition and then the immune stuff too. And I'm not immune because I don't want to get a head cold. I'm immune because I don't want to get melanoma after being an Irish man who spent his youth in tan beds. Yeah, because that's one of the talk about side effect of bodybuilding. Anyway. Okay, let's go to break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about developing grit.
Hey everybody, Iron Radio is back, and in an expanded way. What can you expect? Well, first, you can get it simulcast every week on the nutritionradio.org network, as well as on the original podcast. It'll appear regularly on iTunes, Spotify, and all your favorite podcasting sites. We have a new Iron Radio / Nutrition Radio Facebook page as well. Please check us out. We're even backed up on YouTube. We hope that an expanded presence will get you the news, education, banter, and guests that's made Iron Radio's community so loyal from the start. You are appreciated.
Okay, everybody, we're back. And like Lonnie said, what we're going to talk about is developing grit. And it's just a lot of times, of course, these topics come up with what we're facing right now in life. And one of the things I'm facing is dealing with young men. And a difference you see in young men and like everybody in this world, you have two sets of people, generally elite athletes. They'll do anything it takes to get better. And then you have a group of people that won't do anything it takes to get better. And it's just how it's like I boiled it down to like what we talked about before the show. I have a kid that like sprained a pinky, and he came in, he's like, "Coach, I can't train. Can't do weights today." And I'm like, "What's up?" "I sprained my pinky." Okay. Like we're literally squatting today. Keep your pinky off the bar and let's do this. And you see that like what we see is the opposite in people that excel in any field. Like they find a way. Like, and that's what I boiled it down to is losers find excuses, winners find a way. And to compound that further, like I've been listening to, like I always try and listen to elite athletes from all different fields. And the resounding theme within elite athletes is like, And I saw this in art school and everything else. It's in entrepreneurs, like they're very critical of themselves, and they're always looking for a way to get better, no matter how well they did. Like I was recently listening to a podcast with Jason Kels and Travis Kels, who are both considered the best to ever do it in their field. One a center and one a tight end. And they were talking about watching their film. They said they'd watch their film and they'd do something good, and they'd be like, okay, I did my job. Like when they did something exceptional, I did my job correct. If they had any fault at all, they're like, fuck, I need to do better. You know? So basically they would just accept the good parts as what they should do. And the bad things is, okay, this is my chance to get better. And I saw that in every field of life, writers, artists, anything else. Like, you're happy with what you did, but then 15 minutes later, you're tearing apart what you did and looking for faults in it. And that's generally the same thing in athletes. Like most extreme athletes, and I've been around a lot of them, like if something's wrong, like let's say one of them blows a bicep or something like that just doesn't matter. They find, okay, I can't use that right arm. What can I do? And it's just a change in focus. And can we develop that? How do we develop that? Like, have you guys found that it's grit, if that's what we're going to call it, is something that you can train? Or is it just something that people just get? You know, I don't know. I mean, largely what I've seen is like it's just something that's inherently built into people that are excellent. Like they just have that in them. It's hard to train it. Like you tell somebody just shut up and do better, you know. And that doesn't work. That doesn't work. It's just like I'm dealing with somebody right now that just like, bro, you need to get up and move and get yourself in shape. You're gonna die, and they just don't care. And it's like a drug addict. Like how many people like you send a drug addict to rehab? If they don't want to do it, they're gonna come out of rehab and get right back on drugs. Like you have to want to excel at anything. It doesn't matter how much other people want it for you. It doesn't matter how much grit I want somebody to have as a coach. Like if they don't want it, they're not going to have it. And like the only thing we can do, and it's like I do with my kids, is lead by example. You know, oh fuck, coaches out there, and like right now I'm dealing with. I haven't even talked about this on the radio show, I don't think, because it happened like a week ago. I tore a disc in my back, and I found this out a month after the Highland Games. I've been dealing with an issue. And I finally went in to get it checked out. I just rested it for a couple weeks, and the chiropractor's like, yeah, I can't do anything for you. You got a micro tear in your disc. You need to go on light duty for a few weeks, and it'll be fine. And it's like, okay, well, let me find a workaround. Can't use my back. I'm going to do this. You know, just doing things to keep hopefully moving forward, but at least keeping ground while I let things heal. And that's a hard thing to get across to people. I mean, I'm not sure you're able to unless they want to.
I think it's show, don't tell. I think you really hit on it when you said, like, watch the coach, watch the mentor, right?
Yeah.
Because once people start to practice, I think it's habitual. Like, if you're out of habit, it's just going to grow weak. But it's like neuroplasticity. The more you do something, the more habitual it becomes. And I think grit could become habitual if you could just get that first spark from a coach, like you're saying. Like, well, then lift your pinky off the bar. You know, little daisy, little sunflower. And then once they do that, but good point. It's almost like motivational interviewing. They have to decide to do it. But maybe by watching, you know.
I mean, I'd say this about that is like people you do that to, and some of this is just working with the general public, you know, most like a lot, is some people, it's like, once you pour that into them to like get them to do the thing, it's almost like a drug essentially, and they need more next time to just do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like you build up this like, I don't know, resistance towards just like doing the fucking thing. And I've always had this like, so, you know, with all the like, you know, like alpha male boot camps where they do these like little, you know, weekend Navy SEAL type training and yell at you and all that stuff. Like my personal opinion of it, or at least like theory of it, is like, so all of a sudden you have this huge input of like, you know, super negative, obviously, but like this huge input to get you to do the thing. And so when you come off of that and you go back to regular life and there's not that much input, the resistance just gets higher to just do the thing. So you just become like this little vampire who needs to like just get more and more from other people or from external circumstances before you just do the fucking thing. But like the idea of doing the thing, like I just said, like the Bulgarian style, because I mean we do, we squat every day for the most part with the weightlifters. Is like the less you put into it to like just do it, like you just do it no matter what, is the more it becomes a reflex, and you lower your resistance to it. And you're just like, yeah, that's just what we do. We just squat. Like that's what we do in our training. So you just end up doing it. So the idea that you have to like pour all this into someone to get them to do the smallest thing, to me is backwards. And I think people look to coaches for like the wrong reason. Like they assume coaches are supposed to be the motivating force.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that motivating force is a crutch in the long term.
Mm-hmm.
Like you need to be able to develop that shit on your own. Like you have to develop your own intensity, and not even that. Like you just need to show up and like do
just
the thing.
Up. Yeah,
just have to show up and keep like that's it. It doesn't need to be like a, the more you need someone to just like pour their love and affection into you just to do a fucking like that's what becomes your crippling problem later on, is like you need to do it on your own. The training wheels are great for a minute, but eventually you need to grow the fuck up and like do the thing.
Yeah, and that's where like Wendler's big deal of like discipline over motivation. At some point, motivation wanes. Motivation's not enough. Like anybody that makes it a long ways, at some point they just become disciplined. I have to do this because I have to do this. It's not enjoyable. I'm not motivated to do it. I just know that's what I have to do. There's plenty of days where I go in the gym or getting ready for a meet and it's like, fuck, I don't want to squat. But you know what? I need to do it. If I want to get where I want to go, I got to go through some suck, and it's just part of it. And that's hard to impart on people over time. And maybe it's just being around. I think one thing that can help is, being around other disciplined people that are leading by example. Because it doesn't matter how much, like I've had 100 athletes, 1,000 athletes over the years that are genetically excellent athletes, but have no drive. And nothing pisses me off more. But it doesn't matter how much I want them to do well as a coach. Like you're just not gonna. You're either going to do it or you're not. You have to want to yourself.
Yeah, the role is not to be the extrinsic motivator. I think from the coach's perspective, it's to let the little Daisy know, hey, that's pretty fragile, man.
Yeah.
But how you get them to then adopt their own, discipline or drive to do that.
Yeah.
But I do think though it's habitual if you can start doing it. I think we've all been in that kind of situation before. Like I know before bodybuilding contests, I would just get rolling. There's like this almost like metabolic momentum where after a while I'm like, and I think maybe that's why my body's so beat up now. But you do become pretty, not just disciplined, but the habit does feed on itself. I mean, and maybe it is sort of inborn to like what you're saying for like personality types and stuff like that. There's probably going to be people that you just can't, nobody's going to light a fire under you for you.
Yes. It's the realization, like at some point, anybody that wants to excel at anything, in this case, something athletic, it's the realization that if I'm going to be well above average, there's going to be some downside to it. Like you, like me, like I'm beat the fuck up from what I reached for, but I accepted that and I knew it was going to happen. That's like anybody that steps on a major league field, anybody that plays in the NFL, NBA, like they're going to leave that game when they're done with a ton of side effects from making it to that level. And it's realizing that, I'm okay with that. I did it. I still walked away and like, oddly enough, my boys last weekend, I was training a bunch of kindergartners through 8th graders. And one of the coaches we had come on the field was with the now Las Vegas Raiders. in 2018 and 2019. He made the practice squad. And these kids were talking mad shit on him. Like, oh, you got fired. You got let go of the race. I was like, he fucking made it. He made it there. He had the gumption and the work to make it there. And people don't realize that. Just making it there took a lot of grit. And he gave his everything. And he has injuries and this and that. But he made it where 1% maybe of the population, 1% of 1% makes it there. And that's the motivating factor. But that's hard to teach everybody because, of course, bad shit sucks, but you have to go through bad shit to make it to excellent shit, to have the chance to make it there.
If there's no price to pay, it's not worth it in the end.
Exactly.
There has to be some pain or some price to make it.
Exactly. And that's everything. If you want to be the best father in the world, that means you're going to give up other shit. Like, you're probably not going to be a bazillionaire because you don't have the time to do that. And vice versa. Like, if you're going to be Elon Musk, like, your family life's probably going to suffer somewhat, at least for a while.
Suffer.
Something is going to suffer no matter what if you strive for anything above average, like, other shit's going to suffer because you are giving an unequal amount of attention to something you want to do well at.
Specific to grit, developing grit. If anybody has a hard time with this, they're like, I lack motivation. Sometimes depression and other things can do that to people. But I love a lot of those stoic principles, like, that whole Marcus Aurelius, the obstacle is the way. The older you get, I think if you pay attention, you know what? It's easier next time. I succeed. I got some kind of reward. But if you didn't have to overcome that painful pinky, or I experienced that last week. I had dental work done. Half my face was freaking numb. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to go squat. I'm going to fall over. It's going to be really weird. But I went on a hike. I'm like, do something, man.
Yep.
I'm curious what you do. Do you do anything like this? Anti-fragile stuff I've heard you talk about before, like with your certifications and stuff. How do you address this grit thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a great book called Conscious Coaching by Bartholomew. I would say it's not directly in this wheelhouse, but it's very, very similar. He's got lots of super wise stuff on this area. So I'd encourage people to check his stuff out. And I think one of the things I got from him, which I agree with, is kind of what you were saying at the beginning, Phil. Like, for me, the first thing I look at is the athlete's purpose lining up with what they want to do. Because if it's not, I think you're just going to be working uphill the whole time. Like, if they're just there because their parents want them to show up at football practice and they don't give two hoots about football, good luck,
Yeah.
I mean, you can try to be, air quotes, motivating, but that's about it. But if you have someone who really wants to do the thing, you've identified what the thing is, and you can see that they're trying, but they're having issues, then I think that's somebody you can work with.
Yes.
And in my thought, like, I'll have things that I'll specifically do with them that are more on the physiology side or on the psychology side. So one of the things I found about cold water immersion that's great is it's one of those things you can do almost every day, unless you're an idiot. It's not impairing your recovery. It may or may not help it. That's a whole different topic. But, having done it every day almost for 2 years after COVID, right before you get in, you still don't want to do it. It sucks. There's these thoughts of like, why am I doing this again? This is stupid. I don't want to do this. But then you kind of, overcome that limbic friction and you do the thing. And I do think like stuff like that does transfer to other areas. Like when I train people here in person more often, we used to do what I would call more concentric circuits. So car pushes, sled drags, sledgehammer hits, rower work. And within that, I could kind of tailor it to have it be just outside what the person thinks is possible. It could be a single exposure, it could be multiple exposures. And it was still very hard, but it ideally was still doable.
Mm-hmm.
And because it was mainly concentric only, I knew I didn't really run the risk of like completely torching these people and they can't walk the next day. So I think there's things you can do like that. And then the last part, like you said, Lonnie, I am biased towards what I call physiologic flexibility. But I do think if you look at the 4 areas that we have to hold constant, temperature, pH, fuels, and air, CO2, O2, we're not really trying to change those variables intrinsically. Like if we do sauna work or cold work, we're not trying to change your core temperature all that much. But we know there are adaptations that do correspond to, being in the heat, pH changes, etc. And my bias is that once you've built up these physiologic kind of buffer zones in those areas, again, this is assuming you're pretty good at nutrition, exercise, and sleep. I do think those transfer over to making you more anti-fragile, more resilient.
Mm-hmm.
I can't prove that yet, but I think there's a lot of cross transfer in those areas, and doing those things is a great way to kind of develop that grit. And a lot of those things you can do with a relatively high frequency with a lower cost, as long as you're not an idiot about it. Like you can do some very short cold water immersion every day. And you still have to decide before you get in that thing of, okay, this is going to suck, but I'm choosing to do the thing that sucks, and I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think that skill does transfer to other areas.
I agree, but the hard part is how do you get them to that point where, like, I'm just going to do it? And it's,
right,
like you said, I think it's trainable over time, and I think it's something like that we all come to in any field, and it's the realization that, like, the good is on the other side of great resistance. Like, if I just keep overcoming these little things, I'm going to reach somewhere that's, like, it reminds me of reading the book, The War of Art. Not The Art of War. Like, the whole book is about, like, when you find the resistance, that's where you need to be. That,
Stephen Pressfield.
Yeah, it's Stephen Pressfield, and it's like whatever you're finding in life that gives you the most resistance, where people are telling you, oh, just give up. Like, no, that's where you want to be. That's where you're going to find great things happen. And hell, I have to explain that to my kids and everything else in life. Like most good shit is behind a big fucking wall, and you have to beat through that wall. Like even marriage isn't fucking easy. It'd be easy to not get married, but the benefit of it is amazing, and that's the thing. Yeah. You're going to face things together that are just hard. And maybe it's little doses of that to start and realizing. I think that's what gravitated me towards strength training. The resistance is like, it's right there. It's in your face. It's identifiable. It's another 2.5 pound plate, And that's like, I did endurance stuff for a while, and it's different. Like, it's mainly mental. Like, if I wanted to go out today, and this is what got me into strength training, is just thinking about things like, if I left today and said, I'm going to do an ultra marathon, like, I could fucking do it. It might take me 6 days, but I'll do it. Whereas the ultra marathon runner, if they're like, I want to squat 700 pounds, it ain't going to happen. They can't just mentally make it happen over a short amount of time.
Yeah.
And there was something in me that learned, like, I want to face that force that is just real fucking hard, and I'm gonna find the joy of doing that every day. Like, I went in and I got my ass kicked, but damn it, I tried, and I know getting my ass kicked makes me a step, just a millimeter closer to where I want to go. And it's just finding passion in that. I'm weird and I like it. I think we're all weird that way.
Yeah. That's right. I was going to say, I think our listeners, we gravitate toward resistance training, bodybuilding, powerlifting, grip, strongman, whatever it is, because it's a intensity challenge. It's not a duration challenge.
Yes.
Like Mike looks at this big dumbbell. He's got to grab and pick it up, or I have to have the discipline to not eat dessert or not even eat another portion. I had an old martial arts instructor. He said, discipline is doing something when it's not convenient. And that really stuck with me. Like, delayed gratification, that there's not even a reward on the other side of it today, other than if you've done it enough, And it's interesting, the observation that Jarrell made about, like, there are some people who they just keep feeding off the coach like a vampire, and it never catches the spark, never catches their own fire. But I think for some of us, it does. Like you become aware, something resonates with you, like that, discipline when it's not convenient. And then, over time, if you delay the gratification enough, 20 weeks later, I'm like, holy God, I'm 5% fat.
Yeah.
I feel like a superhero. This is insane. It's very temporary, but still, but it's an intense reward. And then I think that's what hooks you ultimately. That it's almost like, they say partial reinforcement is the most addictive. And I think that's kind of, you've got to see some kind of success, even if it's delayed.
For sure. And I think it also comes down to goal setting, and it's a realization that just aiming for something amazing, even if you don't make it, like I never made it to an 800-pound deadlift, but I made 780. It's like by reaching for that, I made it a long fucking ways, and I'm happy. I'm stoked about that. And it's that realization that set lofty goals, man. And if you don't make it, that's fine. Now look back and see where you did make it. How far do you think you'd make it if you didn't point at that? You made it much further than most. But I think that's where the grit thing's hard. Like, I think it's a big part of why a very small percentage of the population is excellent. Like, if everybody could just run like Usain Bolt, if they just tried a little bit, it wouldn't be that spectacular. Like, it takes a combination of things, mental and physical, to make somebody into Ed Cohn, Like, if everybody could just do it, like, oh, I could do that too if I wanted to. No, you fucking couldn't.
Yeah. No, you can't.
It's because you're just not wired that way. A lot of it is mental. A lot of greatness is on the mental side, and that's hard to train. Like, some of that you just have, from either birth or like nurture versus nature. Some of it's just, due to your past experiences, you've learned to fight resistance, but
to get back up. I always like that Naruto.
Yeah.
He's mostly just a goober who just keeps getting back up. He keeps getting his ass handed to him, and he keeps getting back up. And by the time that series runs through its course, he's like Hokage or whatever. He's like the head, ninja and all this stuff. But he just has a simple rule: just keep doing it. Just keep doing it.
Goofy ass Rocky quotes. It's not about how hard you hit. It's about getting hit and getting back up, and that's a lot of life right there. It's just like, you're going to get your ass knocked down. No matter how good you are, you're going to get beat. Get up and go again. And hopefully you learn something from that. So,
and social support does matter. You talked about like spouse, or your team.
Yeah.
And it is true. The near enemy of this is reliance, is vampirism, like Jarrell was saying. That's a good point. You can't be extrinsically motivated, completely reliant.
No.
But I do think that some social support can help when you're feeling that lack of energy, and you're like, I just can't go to the gym. I'm going to grab that donut.
Everybody's like that. Like, I am internally motivated 99% of the time, but that 1% of the time, I just don't want to train. But I know my training partner's down there parked in his car waiting on me.
Right.
Fuck,
it matters.
I gotta go. I can't not show up. And I might suck that day, but damn it, I went in there and did what I could. So,
even those of us who are very introverted and don't need other people to feed on, we actually rather be solo. You still need some kind of social support, I would think, to stack the cards in your favor.
Yeah.
I think you can harness learning that via kind of, lack of a better word, group suffering. I do think, especially with guys, you get enough people together and they're all doing something very difficult. I think that's a much easier entry point than having them do that alone in their garage to start.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I do think there is something about that group environment, and anyone who's gone through very difficult things with other people, it's very much like a bonding thing. I remember we were out kiteboarding in these horrible conditions. It's pouring rain. It's like 40 miles an hour. It's cold. And I asked a friend of mine, Panda, I said, what the hell are we doing out here? And she's like, oh, this is fun. This is trauma bonding. This is how adults make friends.
Trauma bonding. I like it.
oh, there is kind of something to that because there's 7 of us nut jobs out here doing it.
Right? Yeah, because it points to the fact that there's something good. There's something good in that mutual. I know they say, whatever, misery loves company. But yeah, it's a good point. I haven't actually heard the term trauma bonding, but that makes a lot of sense. It's like war buddies, old war buddies.
Yeah.
You go through something together, but because by helping each other hold on, everybody gets that little taste of reward at some point.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope that helped anybody who's wondering about developing grit. I think at some point you just gotta try it once. It's like lifting a heavy weight, as a metaphor. You have to do something that's not that heavy of a lift. What was the term you said, Mike? Limbic friction. You're such a scientist. It's hilarious.
Yeah,
to me.
I might have stolen that from Huberman, but it's those weird things where, like, there's not any physical harm that's going to come to you. You're in a very controlled environment, all that kind of stuff. You know that you're safe, but the limbic part of your brain is just like, no, we stay in cold water too long. We die. Don't do this. It's stupid.
Right. Yeah. It was like we talked about.
New part of your brain to override that portion and still do the thing.
Right, yeah, override. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's an ep. We got 59 minutes logged here on Skype, so I hope that was helpful to everybody. I guess we'll catch up next week. Mike and I can give you a report from ISSN, see if there's any cool new nutrition and supplement science coming down the pike.
Yeah.
Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the ironradio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community. The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.